The training ground stretched out under three suns. Sergeant J1 stood with his platoon of 40 human soldiers, watching the alien troops practice their combat drills. The other soldiers were huge. Some stood 8 feet tall with thick armor on their skin. Others had 4 arms that could hold multiple weapons at once. One species could see in complete darkness. Another could run faster than any human vehicle. J1 had been a soldier for 15 years on Earth. He had fought in difficult places and trained hundreds of troops. But this was different. This was the Galactic Coalition training facility, where humanity was trying to prove they belonged among the stars. Looking at the alien soldiers around him, J1 understood why many thought humans did not belong here. General Thrakos walked past the human formation. The reptilian commander was massive, his scales gleaming like metal in the sunlight. He stopped in front of J1 and looked down at him. The general was nearly 3 feet taller than any human. "So these are the famous humans," Thrakos said. His voice was deep and rough. "You look so small, so soft. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons at all. Tell me, Sergeant, what exactly can your species do in combat?" J1 kept his face calm. "We adapt, sir. We learn. We survive," Thrakos laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "Adapt, every species adapts. But in real combat, you need strength. You need speed. You need natural weapons." He walked away, still laughing. "Put the humans on labor duty. They can dig trenches and move supplies. That is all they are good for." The other alien soldiers heard this. Soon the mocking began. They called humans soft skins. They made jokes about how fragile human bones were. During mealtimes, the larger species would push humans aside, taking their food. When humans tried to join combat exercises, they were given impossible tasks designed to make them fail. Lieutenant Minsu was younger than J1, fresh from Earth's military academy. He had graduated top of his class with honors in tactical planning. Here, nobody cared about his education. When he tried to present a defensive strategy he had developed, the alien commanders did not even look at his plans. "Your primitive tactics are not needed here," one commander told him. "We have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Your species just learned to leave your own planet. Go clean the weapons storage. That is work suited for humans." Minsu felt anger burning in his chest, but he controlled it. He took his squad and went to the weapons storage as ordered. While cleaning, he studied every weapon system carefully. He memorized how they worked, their strengths, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Private Sung Ho was the youngest human soldier on the base. He was barely 20 years old and terrified of the alien soldiers. The first time he saw a Craven warrior up close, he froze. The creature had 4 arms, sharp teeth, and moved like a predator. It looked at Sung Ho the way a cat looks at a mouse. "What are you staring at, little pink thing?" The Craven warrior growled. "Never seen a real soldier before?" Sung Ho found his voice. "No, sir." "I have not," the Craven laughed. "At least you are honest. Too bad honesty will not save you in battle. You humans will die quickly when real war comes. Better to surrender fast. Maybe your masters will keep you as slaves instead of killing you." But Sung Ho watched and learned. He noticed that the Craven warriors were strong and fast, but they always attacked the same way. They relied on their natural advantages so much that they never changed their tactics. He wrote down everything he observed in a small notebook. Corporal Hyojin was a medic and explosives expert. She had served in dangerous places on Earth where resources were limited, and creativity was necessary for survival. One day during training, her squad was given an exercise. They had to disable an enemy position, but they were given no weapons and very little time. The alien commanders expected the humans to fail. Instead, Hyojin used chemicals from the medical supplies and materials from the construction site to create explosive devices. Her squad completed the exercise faster than any other unit that day. General Thrakos was not impressed. He was angry. "This is not acceptable," he said. "You used dirty tricks. Improvised weapons. This is not how honorable soldiers fight. In real combat, you use proper weapons and face your enemy directly. What you did is cowardly." Hyojin stood at attention. "With respect, General, we completed the mission with the resources available." "Is that not what soldiers do? Real soldiers have honor," Thrakos replied. "They do not use tricks. From now on, humans will not participate in combat exercises. You will only do support work. That is my final decision." That night, J1 gathered his platoon in their barracks. The humans were tired and frustrated. Many wanted to quit and return to Earth. Why stay where they were not wanted or respected? "Listen to me," J1 said quietly. "They think we are weak. They think we are useless. Maybe they are right about some things. We are not as strong. We are not as fast. We do not have armor or claws, he paused. But we have something they do not have. We can think differently. We can adapt. We can survive in ways they cannot imagine. What good does that do us here? One soldier asked. They will never let us prove ourselves. Then we wait, Jae-won said. We train. We learn everything we can about how they fight. We study their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. And when the time comes, when we finally get a chance to show what humans can do, we will be ready. 2 weeks later, assignments were posted. Most alien units were sent to important defensive positions near coalition headquarters. The humans received a different assignment. They were being sent to New Jeju, a remote mining colony on the edge of explored space. It was a quiet posting where nothing ever happened. It was clearly a punishment. General Thrakos personally delivered the news. You will guard a mining colony. Keep the workers safe from minor problems. Try not to embarrass yourselves too badly. This is the best use for human soldiers. The aliens laughed as the humans packed their equipment. One species made bets on how quickly the humans would request transfer back to easier duty. Another joked that humans would probably run away at the first sign of danger. As their transport ship prepared to leave, Captain Vex of the insectoid Chitauri approached Jae-won. Unlike the others, Vex had been quietly watching the humans. Sergeant, Vex said in his clicking voice, I saw what your medic did with those improvised explosives. That was impressive, Jae-won nodded. Thank you, Captain. The others think you are weak, Vex continued. They think this is certain, but I am not sure they are correct. I think perhaps they are making a mistake. He paused. Be careful out there, Sergeant. The frontier is more dangerous than they tell you. With that warning, the humans departed for New Jeju. The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, Jae-won drilled his platoon constantly. Min-soo created defensive plans for every possible scenario. Hee-jin taught everyone how to make weapons from common materials. Sung-ho studied the colony's layout and surrounding terrain from the ship's database. When they arrived at New Jeju, the colony administrator seemed disappointed. They sent humans? He said. I requested a proper military garrison. What am I supposed to do with 40 humans? You can let us do our job, Jae-won replied calmly. Where do you want us to set up our defensive positions? The administrator waved his hand dismissively. Wherever you want. Nothing ever happens here anyway. This colony has not had a security problem in 20 years. The humans got to work immediately. They dug trenches, built bunkers, and set up defensive positions around the colony perimeter. The civilian workers watched and made jokes. Why were these humans working so hard when nothing bad ever happened here? But the humans kept working. They turned the colony into a fortress piece by piece. They stockpiled supplies in hidden locations. They created backup communication systems. They mapped escape routes and rally points. Do you really think we will need all this? Sung-ho asked one evening as they finished another defensive position. Jae-won looked at the stars above them. I hope not. But if trouble comes, we will be ready. That is what soldiers do. Far away in another part of the galaxy, War Chief Krell of the Craven Dominion was studying intelligence reports. His species was always looking for new worlds to conquer, new species to enslave. One report caught his attention, a human colony, defended by only 40 soldiers, thousands of civilians with no military protection, far from any coalition support. It was perfect, Krell smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We attack in 3 weeks. This will be an easy victory. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. On New Jeju, the human garrison continued their preparations. They trained every day. They improved their defenses. They watched and waited. They did not know that war was coming. But when it arrived, they would show the galaxy what human soldiers could really do. The alarm screamed through New Jeju colony at dawn. Sergeant Jae-won was already awake, as he always was before sunrise. He ran to the command center where Private Sung-ho was staring at the sensor displays with wide eyes. 3 ships, Sergeant, Sung-ho said, his voice shaking. Big ones. They just appeared in orbit. The computer identifies them as Craven warships. Jae-won felt his stomach tighten, but his face stayed calm. He had trained for 20 years to keep his fear hidden. His soldiers needed to seek confidence, not panic. Sound the alarm for all personnel, he ordered. Get Lieutenant Min-soo and Corporal Hye-jin to command immediately. Send a distress signal to coalition headquarters. Tell them we are under attack. Within minutes, his platoon assembled at their defensive positions. The civilians ran to the underground shelters that the humans had prepared. The colony administrator appeared, his face pale with fear. The Craven Dominion, the administrator whispered. They are raiders and slavers. They will kill anyone who resists and take the rest as slaves. We must surrender immediately. No, Jae-won said simply. No. Are you insane? There are 3 warships up there. Thousands of Craven warriors. You only have 40 soldiers. Jae-won looked at the administrator with steady eyes. We are human soldiers. We do not surrender. Get to the shelter with the civilians. We will handle this. A transmission came through from the Craven fleet. War Chief Krell's face appeared on the screen. He was terrifying to look at with 4 powerful arms and teeth like knives. Attention, human colony, Krell said, his voice full of amusement. I am War Chief Krell. You will surrender now. Give up peacefully and we will only take half of you as slaves. Resist and we will kill everyone. You have 1 hour to decide. Lieutenant Min-soo stood next to Jae-won. The young officer's hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was firm. We have prepared good defenses, Sergeant, but there are so many of them. Can we really hold? We do not have to defeat them, Jae-won replied. We just have to hold long enough for help to arrive. The distress signal is sent. Coalition forces will come. We just need to survive until then. That could be weeks, maybe months. Then we hold for weeks or months. Send the response to War Chief Krell. Min-soo opened the communication channel. Jae-won's response was short and clear. War Chief Krell, this is Sergeant Jae-won of the Human Defense Force. We do not surrender. If you want this colony, come and take it. There was silence for a moment. Then Krell laughed, a horrible sound that made everyone listening feel cold. Brave words from such weak creatures. Very well, humans. I will enjoy breaking you. My warriors will land in 1 hour. Try to die with some dignity. The communication ended. Jae-won turned to his assembled soldiers. 40 humans against thousands of Craven warriors. The math was clear, but math did not account for everything. Listen carefully, Jae-won said. The Craven are stronger than us. They are faster than us. They have better weapons and more warriors. They think this means they have already won. He paused. They are wrong. We have something they do not have. We have prepared for this moment. We know this ground. We have trained for this, and most importantly, we refuse to lose. Corporal Hae-jin raised her hand. She had a wild smile on her face that made some of the younger soldiers nervous. Sergeant, we have 50 mining charges ready. I have also prepared another 40 improvised explosives using the colony's chemical supplies. Where do you want them? Line the approach routes. Space them every 20 meters. Link them to our defensive positions so we can detonate them by remote control. Jae-won looked at the defensive map. They will expect us to defend from fixed positions. We will do something different. 1 hour later, the Craven dropships descended from orbit. They came in massive formations, black against the morning sky. Sung-ho counted them from his observation post. 50 dropships. Each one holds about 40 warriors. That makes 2,000 enemies, Sergeant. Acknowledged, Jae-won replied calmly. Everyone hold position. Wait for my command. Do not fire until they are in the kill zone. The Craven warriors exited their ships and formed up. They were massive creatures, each one standing over 7 feet tall with 4 arms carrying plasma rifles. They roared war cries and beat their chests. They looked unstoppable. War Chief Krell was on the ground with his warriors, leading from the front as Craven tradition demanded. He pointed at the colony walls. Attack, he roared. Show these weak humans what Craven warriors can do. The Craven army charged forward in a massive wave. They moved fast, covering ground quickly. They expected the humans to start firing immediately, wasting their ammunition in panic. Instead, there was only silence from the human positions. The Craven warriors ran between the defensive walls, confident and strong. They were halfway to the colony when Jae-won gave the order. Now, Corporal Hae-jin pressed the detonator. The ground exploded. Mines that had been carefully placed over months erupted simultaneously. Improvised explosives hidden in barrels and crates went off in sequence. The approaching Craven force disappeared in smoke and fire. When the smoke cleared, 200 Craven warriors were dead or wounded. The survivors were confused and disorganized. All positions open fire, Jae-won commanded. The humans fired from prepared positions. Every shot was aimed. Every bullet found a target. The Craven had superior weapons, but the humans had superior positions and training. Within 5 minutes, another 100 Craven were down. War Chief Krell watched in disbelief. 300 of his warriors were dead or wounded, and his force had not even reached the colony walls yet. This was supposed to be easy. Humans were weak, everyone said so. Fall back, Krell ordered. Regroup and prepare for a proper assault. The Craven retreated, carrying their wounded. The humans did not pursue. They checked their ammunition and prepared for the next attack. Good work, Jae-won said over the communication system. First wave repelled. Ammunition status. We used about 20% of our supplies, Lieutenant Min-soo reported. At this rate, we can repel maybe 4 more attacks before we run out. Then we will make every shot count, J1 replied. He-Jin, start preparing more improvised explosives. Everyone else get some food and water. They will attack again soon. Private Sung-ho managed to send a status update through the communication blackout. The message was broken and weak, but it got through to coalition headquarters where General Thrakos was reviewing reports. An aide brought him the message. Thrakos read it and frowned. New Jeju colony reports attack by Craven forces. Human garrison requests immediate support. Thrakos waved his hand dismissively. The humans are probably already defeated. The Craven would have overwhelmed them in minutes. File the report as low priority. We will send a recovery team in a few weeks to retrieve what is left. But General, should we not verify? It is 40 humans against Craven raiders. There is nothing to verify. They are gone. Move on to the next item. But Captain Vex, the insectoid officer, had been listening. He had studied human tactics and remembered what he saw during training. He accessed the communication logs and found Sung-ho's message. It said something important that Thrakos had ignored. First attack repelled. 300 enemy casualties. 0 friendly casualties. Preparing for sustained defense. Vex read the message 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. The humans had stopped the first Craven assault, with no losses. That should have been impossible. He began preparing an unauthorized report to send to higher authorities. Someone needed to know that the humans were not defeated. Someone needed to understand what was happening on New Jeju. Back at the colony, War Chief Krell planned his second assault. He was angry now. The humans had embarrassed him with their tricks and traps. But tricks only work once. This time he would be careful. This time he would crush them properly. He divided his forces into 3 groups. They would attack from different directions simultaneously. The humans could not defend everywhere at once. His warriors were eager for revenge. They would show these weak creatures what happened when you defied the Craven Dominion. The second attack came at sunset. 1,500 Craven warriors assaulted the colony from 3 sides at once. They moved more carefully this time, watching for traps and mines. But Lieutenant Minsu had anticipated this. The humans did not meet them at the walls. Instead, small teams moved through tunnels and maintenance passages, attacking from unexpected angles. They used hit-and-run tactics, firing a few shots and then disappearing before the Craven could respond. The Craven warriors became frustrated. They could not find the humans to fight them properly. Every time they thought they had cornered a group, the humans would vanish through hidden passages. Meanwhile, more explosives detonated, more snipers fired from concealed positions, and more Craven fell. By nightfall, the Craven had gained no ground and lost 300 more warriors. Krell ordered another retreat. He was beginning to feel something he had never felt before in combat. Doubt. In the Human Command Center, Jae-won reviewed the reports. 3 casualties, all minor wounds. 600 enemy casualties across 2 attacks. Ammunition down to 50%. The colony's manufacturing facilities were working constantly to produce more improvised explosives and convert mining equipment into defensive weapons. How long can we keep this up? Minsu asked. Jae-won looked at the map. 3 weeks had passed since the siege began. New Jeju colony was barely recognizable. Buildings were damaged by weapons fire. The once clean streets were marked by blast craters. The defensive walls showed the scars of constant fighting. But the human flag still flew above the command center. Sergeant Jae-won looked at his platoon during the morning briefing. They were exhausted. Everyone had lost weight. Their uniforms were dirty and torn. Some soldiers had bandages covering wounds, but their eyes were still sharp and determined. 31 soldiers remained combat effective. 9 were dead, their bodies buried in a small cemetery behind the command center. The Craven had lost over 1,200 warriors. The math favored the humans, but math did not account for exhaustion, dwindling supplies, or the crushing weight of constant combat. War Chief Krell was planning something new. Private Sung-ho had intercepted Craven communications during the night. The enemy was preparing their final assault, and this time they were bringing their biggest weapons: orbital bombardment. The Craven warships in orbit could destroy the colony from space. They had not used this option before because they wanted slaves, not rubble. But after 3 weeks of humiliating defeat, Krell no longer cared about taking prisoners. He wanted the humans dead. Lieutenant Minsu brought the news to Jae-won in the command center. We have 48 hours before they begin orbital strikes. After that, nothing we built will matter. The colony will be destroyed from above. Jae-won studied the tactical display. He had known this moment would come eventually. No defense could hold forever against an enemy who controlled space. but he was not ready to surrender. Can we reach their ships? Minsu shook his head. We have one damaged shuttle left. It is barely spaceworthy. Even if we could get it to orbit, it has no weapons, but it could carry explosives. The young lieutenant understood immediately. It would be a suicide mission. Jae-won nodded. I know, but if we do nothing, everyone dies. If we damage their flagship enough to delay the bombardment, maybe help will arrive in time. Let me lead the mission. You need to stay here with the garrison. Corporal Haijin entered the command center. She was limping from a wound she had received during the previous day's fighting, but she refused to stay in medical. I heard we are making a delivery to orbit. I have just the package prepared. She had been working for days using every explosive she could find or make. The shuttle would carry enough firepower to damage even a Craven battleship. I volunteer for the mission, Haijin said. Nobody knows these explosives better than me. Private Sung-ho appeared at the doorway. I volunteer too. You will need a pilot and someone to handle communications. Jae-won looked at the three soldiers. Minsu was young but brilliant. Haijin was one of his best warriors. Sung-ho had grown from a terrified private into a skilled operator. Sending them on a suicide mission felt like failure, but it was their choice, and it was the only chance the colony had. All three of you together. That gives you the best chance of success. You launch in 12 hours. Use the time to prepare. News of the mission spread quickly through the garrison. Every soldier wanted to volunteer. They drew lots to see who would join the shuttle crew. Minsu had to turn away dozens of soldiers who wanted to be part of the attack. That night, the volunteers gathered for a final meal. They tried to keep the mood light, telling stories and making jokes. But everyone knew what tomorrow would bring. Sung-ho sat quietly writing in his notebook. He had filled many pages during the siege, documenting everything that happened. Now he wrote letters to his family, not knowing if they would ever be delivered. Haijin checked her explosives one final time. Everything was perfect. The shuttle would be a flying bomb and she would make sure it reached its target. Minsu reviewed the flight plan. The shuttle was old and damaged. Getting it to orbit would be difficult. Getting it close to a Craven warship would be nearly impossible. But he had calculated every detail, planned for every contingency. Jae-won found Minsu working late in the command center. You should rest before the mission. I will rest when this is done. Minsu looked at his commander. Do you think help is really coming? Jae-won was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, I believe Admiral Yoonji received our messages. I believe the fleet is coming. We just need to buy them time. And if they do not arrive in time, then we will have shown the galaxy what human soldiers can do. 3 weeks ago, the aliens thought we were useless. Now they know different. That matters. Far away in space, Admiral Yoonji stood on the bridge of her flagship. Around her, 30 human warships moved in perfect formation. They had been traveling at maximum speed for 3 weeks, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. How much longer? The navigation officer checked his console. 48 hours to New Jeju, Admiral. Too long. They might not last that long. Commander Ji-woo, captain of the dreadnought Indomitable, stepped forward. We can push the engines harder. It will damage them, but we can arrive in 36 hours. Do it. Signal the fleet. Maximum speed. We are not losing New Jeju. On New Jeju, dawn came too quickly. The shuttle sat on the damaged landing pad, loaded with enough explosives to level a city block. 5 volunteers climbed aboard, led by Lieutenant Minsu. The garrison assembled to see them off. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say that had not already been said. Jae-won saluted the volunteers. They saluted back, then boarded the shuttle. The engine started with a rough sound. The shuttle was never meant to fly again, but human engineers had worked miracles to make it spaceworthy for one final mission. The shuttle lifted off, climbing slowly into the sky. Everyone on the ground watched until it disappeared from sight. In orbit, War Chief Krell watched the shuttle approach with amusement. A damaged shuttle trying to attack my flagship. These humans are either brave or insane. His weapons officer spoke up. Should we destroy it, War Chief? Not yet, let them get close. I want to see what they think they can accomplish with that flying junk. On the shuttle, Minsu pushed the engines as hard as they would go. The craft shook and groaned, but it kept accelerating. They were committed now. Haijin armed the explosives. Every charge was connected to a dead man switch. If they were killed before reaching the target, the explosives would still detonate. Sung-ho sent one final message to the colony. He kept it simple. For humanity. For New Jeju. For everyone who said we could not do this. The Craven flagship grew larger in their view screen. Its weapons were tracking them now, ready to fire. War Chief Krell realized too late what was happening. This was not an attack. It was a kamikaze strike fire. Destroy that shuttle now. Plasma fire tore through the shuttle. The hull breached. Systems failed, but momentum carried the wreckage forward, directly toward the flagship. Yi-Jin had seconds left. She looked at Min-Soo and Sung-Ho and smiled. See you on the other side, boys. She triggered the detonator. The explosion was visible from the surface of New Jeju. A brilliant flash of light in orbit, like a new star being born. The Craven flagship reeled from the blast. Its main weapons were destroyed. Its shields were down. The ship began drifting, crippled but not destroyed. War Chief Krell pulled himself from the wreckage on his bridge. Half his crew was dead. The ship was barely functioning, and the humans who flew that shuttle had accomplished the impossible. On the surface, Jaewon received damage reports. The flagship could not bombard them now. They had bought themselves time. But at what cost? A transmission crackled through the emergency channels. It was weak and broken, but the words were clear enough. This is Emergency Pod 4. We are alive. Repeat, we are alive. Oxygen running low. Please respond, it was Sung-Ho's voice. Against all odds, some of the crew had survived in an escape pod. They were floating in space, their air running out, waiting for rescue that might never come. Jaewon grabbed the transmitter. This is New Jeju Command. We hear you. Hold position. Help is coming. How do you know? Sung-Ho asked because it has to. Just hold on, space rippled. Reality tore open. 30 human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their weapons already charging. Admiral Eunji stood on her bridge, surveying the scene, the damaged Craven fleet, the battered colony below, the escape pod floating helplessly. She opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system. Both human and Craven. This is Admiral Eunji of the Human Defense Fleet. To the Craven forces, you attacked our people. You killed our soldiers. You mocked our species. That was your mistake. To the garrison of New Jeju, you have made us proud. The fleet has arrived. Your relief is here. On the colony surface, 31 exhausted soldiers heard those words and began to cheer. They had held. They had survived. And now the aliens who had laughed at human soldiers were about to learn what human warfare truly meant. The human fleet moved with deadly precision. Admiral Eunji had spent years being dismissed by alien commanders who thought humans were too weak for real combat. Now she would show them what human military doctrine could accomplish. Commander Jiwoo positioned his dreadnought Indomitable between the colony and the Craven fleet. The massive warship bristled with weapons, its armor plating scarred from dozens of previous battles. It was designed for one purpose: to destroy enemies who thought they were stronger than humanity. Rescue the escape pod first. Then engage the Craven fleet. A human destroyer broke formation and accelerated toward the floating escape pod. Inside, Lieutenant Min-Soo, Corporal Hai-Jin, and Private Sung-Ho watched through the small window as salvation approached. Their oxygen was nearly gone. Another 10 minutes and they would have suffocated. Sung-Ho felt tears running down his face. He tried to speak but could not find words. Min-Soo put a hand on his shoulder. We made it. We all made it. The destroyer's bay doors opened, pulling the escape pod inside. Medical teams were waiting. Within seconds, the 3 survivors were being treated for injuries and decompression sickness. On New Jeju's surface, assault shuttles descended carrying fresh troops and supplies. The battered garrison watched in amazement as Marines in clean uniforms jumped out, ready for combat. A Marine captain approached Sergeant Jaewon and saluted sharply. Captain Hayes reporting, "Sergeant, we are here to relieve your position." Jaewon returned the salute, suddenly feeling how tired he was. His legs were shaking. When was the last time he had slept properly? 3 weeks ago? Thank you, Captain. The perimeter is secure for now, but the Craven have over 800 warriors remaining on the surface. Not for long. Hayes looked up at the sky where the fleet was maneuvering. The Admiral has plans for them. In orbit, War Chief Krell watched the human fleet with growing fear. His flagship was crippled. His warriors on the ground were trapped. And the human warships were positioning themselves with a coordination that spoke of training and experience far beyond what he had expected. He opened a channel to Admiral Eunji, hoping to negotiate. Human Commander, I am War Chief Krell. I propose a ceasefire. We will withdraw our forces if you allow us to leave peacefully. Admiral Eunji's face appeared on his screen. She looked at him with cold eyes that held no mercy. 3 weeks ago, you attacked a colony of civilians defended by 40 soldiers. You killed 9 of my people. You tried to take our civilians as slaves. You laughed at human weakness. Now you ask for mercy? Krell felt his pride warring with his fear. We are warriors. We seek honorable combat. There is no honor in attacking civilians. There is no honor in mocking soldiers who defended their people with everything they had. You want to know about human warfare, War Chief? Let me educate you. The human fleet opened fire. It was not the chaotic battle that craven warriors preferred, where strength and aggression determined victory. This was something else entirely. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, their targeting systems linked together. When one ship fired, the others adjusted their positions to create overlapping fields of fire. When a craven vessel tried to maneuver, the humans had already predicted the move and blocked the escape route. Commander Jiwoo led the Indomitable straight at Krell's damaged flagship. The craven ship was still dangerous, its remaining weapons firing desperately, but the dreadnought's armor absorbed the hits while its weapons systematically dismantled the craven defenses. This is for the soldiers who held New Jeju for 3 weeks. This is for every human you called weak. The Indomitable's main guns fired. The craven flagship's engines exploded. The ship went dead in space, powerless and defeated. Across the system, human vessels were destroying or disabling craven ships with ruthless efficiency. What should have been a fleet battle lasting hours was over in minutes. The craven had superior physical strength and powerful weapons, but they could not match human tactical coordination. On the surface, the craven warriors found themselves surrounded. Human marine dropships had landed all around their positions. Speakers blared messages in the craven language. Attention, craven forces. You are surrounded and cut off from orbital support. Your fleet has been defeated. Surrender now and you will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist and you will be eliminated. Many craven warriors refused to surrender. They were bred for combat, taught that retreat was shameful. They charged the human positions with roars of defiance. The human marines were ready. They had studied the recordings of how Jaewon's garrison fought. They used the same tactics, improved with fresh troops and better equipment. Craven warriors who had terrified the galaxy for centuries discovered that aggression without strategy was just noise. By sunset, it was over. The craven fleet was destroyed or captured. The ground forces had surrendered or been eliminated. The 3-week siege of New Jeju had ended in total human victory. Admiral Yoonji descended to the colony in her personal shuttle. She wanted to meet the garrison that had held out for so long against impossible odds. Sergeant Jaewon and his remaining soldiers stood in formation outside the command center. They looked terrible, covered in dirt and dried blood, their uniforms in tatters. But they stood straight and proud. Yoonji walked down the line, looking each soldier in the eye. These were not the polished Marines from her fleet. These were veterans now, hardened by weeks of constant combat. She stopped in front of Jaewon and saluted. Sergeant Jaewon, on behalf of humanity and the Human Defense Fleet, I salute your courage and dedication. You and your soldiers have proven what human warriors can accomplish. Jaewon returned the salute. We just did our job, Admiral. Your job was to hold this colony until relief arrived. You held it for 3 weeks against an enemy that outnumbered you 50-1. That is not just doing your job. That is extraordinary. One of the younger soldiers spoke up, his voice shaking with emotion. Admiral, everyone said humans were weak. Everyone said we could not fight. Did we prove them wrong? Yoonji smiled. She had heard the recordings of the mockery humans faced during training. She had read reports of how aliens dismissed human soldiers as useless. Soldier, the entire galaxy is watching this system right now. They saw your garrison hold off thousands of craven warriors. They saw our fleet destroy a craven battle group in minutes. Nobody will ever laugh at human soldiers again. Indeed, the galaxy was watching. Captain Vex had continued broadcasting everything that happened at New Jeju. Every alien military commander in the coalition had seen the human defense. They had watched in disbelief as 40 humans accomplished what should have been impossible. General Thrakos sat in his office, reviewing the battle reports for the 10th time. He could barely believe what he was reading. The same humans he had assigned to manual labor had held off an army. The species he had mocked had destroyed a craven fleet with minimal losses. His aide entered the office nervously. General, the Coalition Council is demanding your presence. They want to discuss human integration into the military command structure. Thrakos stood up slowly. He had been a general for over 2 centuries, fought in countless battles, commanded armies across dozens of worlds. In all that time, he had never been wrong about a species' military capability. Until now. Back on New Jeju, the victory celebration was quiet. The garrison was too exhausted for loud festivities. They ate hot food, the first real meal in weeks. They cleaned themselves and treated their wounds. They mourned the 9 soldiers who had not survived to see the fleet arrive. Lieutenant Min-soo, Corporal Hai-jin, and Private Sung-ho joined their unit. The reunion was emotional. They had all thought the shuttle crew was dead. Hye-jin looked at the destroyed colony around them. "We saved it. This place is a wreck, but we saved it." Min-soo nodded. "More importantly, we showed the galaxy who we are. They will rebuild the colony, but they cannot rebuild the lesson we taught them." Sung-ho opened his notebook, now filled with 3 weeks of notes and observations. The galaxy thought we were weak. They learned that weakness and strength are not about muscles or claws. It is about will, about refusing to give up, about standing together when everything seems lost. Admiral Yoonji addressed the combined human forces later that evening. Today marks a turning point for humanity in the galactic community. We are no longer the newcomers to be dismissed and mocked. We are warriors who have earned respect through deeds, not words. The soldiers of New Jeju showed the galaxy what human determination looks like. Our fleet showed them what human warfare looks like. Together we have announced to the universe that humanity is here to stay. The Marines cheered. The garrison, too tired to cheer loudly, smiled and nodded. Jae-won looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien commanders were re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about humans. Military academies would study the defense of New Jeju for years to come. The mockery was over. A new era had begun. 3 months after the Battle of New Jeju, the Galactic Coalition Military Academy looked different. Human instructors walked the halls alongside alien officers. In the training grounds, mixed units of humans and aliens practiced tactics that combined the best of both approaches. Sergeant Jae-won stood in front of a classroom filled with young officers from a dozen different species. He wore his dress uniform now, decorated with medals he never expected to receive. Behind him, a large screen displayed footage from the siege. What you are about to see is 3 weeks of combat condensed into 1 hour. Pay attention not to the weapons we used, but to how we used them. War is not about having the biggest guns or the strongest warriors. It is about using what you have in the smartest way possible. The students watched in silence as the recordings played. They saw improvised explosives stop the first Craven charge. They saw human soldiers using tunnels and hidden passages to attack from unexpected angles. They saw 40 humans accomplish what military theory said was impossible. A young Craven warrior raised his hand, his voice respectful in a way that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Instructor Jae-won, my species values strength and direct combat. How do we learn to fight like humans when it goes against our nature?" Jae-won smiled. "You do not need to fight exactly like humans. You need to understand that your strength is a tool, not the only tool. Use your natural advantages, but think about the bigger picture. That is what we can teach you." Across the academy, Lieutenant Min-soo taught a class on tactical planning. His students included experienced officers who had fought in wars before humans even knew aliens existed. They listened carefully as the young human explained concepts they had never considered. Defense is not about building the strongest wall. It is about making your enemy waste resources attacking positions you designed to be attacked. Every mine they trigger, every ambush they walk into, every moment they spend confused about your plans is a victory. Captain Vex, the insectoid officer, who had been the first alien to respect humans, sat in the front row. He had become one of Min-soo's strongest advocates, helping translate human military concepts into terms other species could understand. Private Sung-ho, now promoted to sergeant, taught reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. His notebook from The Siege had become a textbook, required reading for all scouts and intelligence officers in the coalition military. Information wins wars before the first shot is fired. We held New Jeju partly because we knew everything about our enemy. We studied their patterns, learned their weaknesses, predicted their moves. That knowledge was as important as any weapon. Corporal Hye-jin recovered from her injuries and returned to active duty. She taught a class that no alien military had ever considered necessary before: improvised warfare and resource management. Most species rely on their technology and weapons. But what happens when those run out? What happens when you are cut off from supplies? Humans learned long ago that anything can be a weapon if you are creative enough. Today, I will teach you to see possibilities where others see nothing. Her students, including several high-ranking officers, learned to make explosives from common materials, turn mining equipment into defensive weapons, and create communication devices from salvaged parts. Skills that seemed primitive to aliens proved to be incredibly valuable. Admiral Yoon-ji was promoted to Joint Coalition Forces Command, the first human to hold such a high position. She worked with General Thrakos, who had become one of her strongest supporters after admitting his errors. They stood together in the command center, planning the defense of the coalition's border territories against potential threats. "Your species has changed how we think about warfare," Thrakos said. "Before humans, we relied on what we were naturally good at. We never thought to combine different approaches or learn from species weaker than ourselves. We are not weaker, just different. Humans learned long ago that we had to be smarter because we were not as physically powerful as many predators on our home world. That necessity became our strength." Thrakos nodded slowly. "I was wrong about your species. I dismissed you because you did not fit my understanding of what a warrior should be. I will not make that mistake again." On New Jeju, reconstruction was nearly complete. The colony had been rebuilt stronger than before, with defensive systems designed by both human and alien engineers. A memorial stood in the center of the colony, listing the names of the 9 soldiers who died during the siege. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see where the famous battle took place. They walked the defensive positions, saw the tunnels and bunkers, and read the historical markers explaining what happened. Many aliens who had once mocked humans came to understand that strength took many forms. The colony's civilian administrator, who had wanted to surrender on the first day, gave tours to important visitors. "I will be honest with you. When Sergeant Jaewon and his 40 soldiers arrived, I thought we were doomed. When the Craven attacked, I begged them to surrender. But they refused. They said humans do not give up. I did not believe them." He paused, looking at the memorial. "Now I understand what human determination means. They saved all 3,000 of us. They showed the galaxy that courage is not about size or strength. It is about will." In the Craven Dominion's territory, War Chief Krell sat in a prison cell. He was not executed, despite his war crimes. The Coalition believed in justice through law, not revenge. He spent his days being interviewed by military historians who wanted to understand what went wrong. Captain Vex visited him one day, curious about the warrior's perspective. "Do you understand now why you lost?" Krell was silent for a long time. Then he spoke quietly, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. "I thought war was about who was stronger. I thought having more warriors and better weapons meant automatic victory. The humans taught me that war is about who thinks better, who adapts better, who refuses to lose even when losing seems certain." He looked at Vex with something like respect in his eyes. They were not the strongest warriors, but they were the best soldiers. News of the Craven defeat spread through the Dominion's conquered territories. Several species saw New Jeju as proof that the Craven could be beaten. Rebellions began on 3 worlds. The mighty Dominion, which had seemed unstoppable for centuries, found itself struggling with internal conflicts. High Commander Zorth, the Dominion's supreme leader, watched his empire begin to crack. The defeat at New Jeju had done more than destroy one fleet. It had destroyed the idea that Craven warriors were invincible. 1 year after the battle, the Coalition held a ceremony honoring the defenders of New Jeju. Representatives from hundreds of worlds attended. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Sergeant Jaewon and his garrison stood on a stage in their dress uniforms. Admiral Yoon-ji presented each soldier with the Coalition's highest military honor, the Star of Valor. The medals were usually given to individuals who performed single acts of incredible bravery. This was the first time an entire unit received them together. Jaewon spoke briefly after receiving his medal. 1 year ago, the galaxy thought human soldiers were a joke. We were too weak, too soft, too primitive to be real warriors. My garrison and I did not set out to prove anyone wrong. We just did our duty. We protected the people depending on us. We held our ground because that is what soldiers do. If our stand taught the galaxy anything, I hope it taught them that assumptions are dangerous. Never judge what someone can do based on what they look like. The audience of alien dignitaries stood and applauded. Many of them had once laughed at humans. Now they stood to honor them. After the ceremony, Lieutenant Min-Soo walked through the academy grounds with Captain Vex. The young human officer was still amazed by how much had changed. 1 year ago, nobody would listen to my tactical plans. Now I teach classes to officers who have been soldiers longer than I have been alive. You earned that respect. Vex's compound eyes gleamed in the light. When I first saw humans during training, I thought the others were right to mock you. You seemed so fragile. But I watched you during exercises. I saw creativity where others saw weakness. I saw determination where others saw stubbornness. That is why I kept broadcasting what happened at New Jeju. The galaxy needed to see what I saw. Thank you for believing in us before anyone else did. I did not believe in you at first. You taught me to believe in you. That is the difference. On Earth, the story of New Jeju became legendary. Children learned about the siege in school. Military recruits studied Sergeant Jaewon's tactics. The 40 soldiers who held the line became heroes, though most of them insisted they were just doing their duty. Sung-ho published his notebook as a book called 3 Weeks, A Soldier's Story of New Jeju. It became a bestseller on dozens of worlds. The young man who had been terrified during the first Craven attack was now a respected author and instructor. Hyojin returned to active duty but also consulted with civilian companies. Her expertise in improvised weapons and resource management proved valuable in disaster response and remote operations. She helped colonies prepare for emergencies, teaching them that creativity could save lives. Commander Jiwoo continued to command the Indomitable. His dreadnought became the flagship for the first true multi-species fleet, where human and alien crews worked side by side.